Hey everybody, welcome to CSS Hacks for the wonderful Elementor page builder in WordPress, and today I'm going to show you how to turn the humble slide box widget into a zoom box where we have a hover event that zooms in the background image and places the element overlay in place and the description and a button. So a very nifty effect using a single widget to have multiple elements reveal on hover. So let's jump to the back end where I already have my widget in place with a single slide, with an image, with a background overlay, no Ken Burns effect, and we have also our title, our description, and our button in place. So let's jump to Advanced tab where I've already given it a custom CSS class of the DB slider reveal, which we're going to be using to make sure it's specific to this widget. And let's just jump into the custom CSS where we are going to target 3 elements using Elementor specific classes. And let's make this a little bit wider. And zoom in close where we can see we have this slider reveal prefixing the elementor-slide-description, the slide button, and this slick slide inner elementor-background-overlay, which are the 3 elements that basically have an opacity change from when it's not being hovered on to when it's being hovered on. And just a little pointer, guys, here, each of these comma delimiters actually allows us to force each of these lines onto a separate line to make that code a little bit more readable. And effectively what they're going to say is anything within this open curly braces will have those properties applied to all 3 of them. And all we're going to change is we're going to give ourselves a transition affect all. We could just target the opacity property, which is what we're going to be using, and we're going to set that wonderful ease in out value. Now currently you won't see any change because there's been no transformation. We've just set up the timing between those 2 transform states. So we're now going to use one of my favorite properties, which is the Pseudoclasses, which is this not hover statement. So all this is actually saying is when we are not hovering on the DB slider reveal, the Elementor slide description, and likewise for all of these 3 statements, will receive the following properties. And all we're going to do is we're going to make an opacity change. So before I close it off, let's just zoom back out. We want to set the opacity to 0, and the second we do so, we can see them fade away, okay, over that 1 second that we set up here in our transition. And when we zoom over the top, there's our reveal. So very simple, guys. And the next part we're just going to target now is how do we give ourselves that zoom effect. So with this particular one, we have to target a couple of new classes. And again, the slide reveal to make it specific to the widgets carrying that class. And we have our Elementor slides and our slide background in place. And now we're going to give it a transition duration. Because the slider widget already has a Ken Burns effect, and a lot of the Elementor widgets already have a transition set, and it's been applied to all transformations, we don't need to actually apply the transition to this particular element. We're just going to change the duration, and I'm going to bump it up to a big old 3 seconds with the important statement to override the Elementor CSS. And what I'm going to do set that to is a scale property of 1.2, okay, and just type that correctly, and there we can see we have our image zoomed in, but there's no change when we hover because we now need to set that state. And again, we're just going to use that wonderful not hover function to put the scale back where it belongs. So there we go, we have our not hover effect and says put the scale to 1. So effectively when it's not being hovered on, leave it the size it originated as, and when you hover over the top, set it to 1.2. Now you could reverse this process. I mean, you could set this down here to 1.2 and set this to 1. And then you'll have the other effect where you now have a zoom out function. Okay, so that's a fairly simple way of switching stuff around. So there we go. We have our simple reveal zoom box using the slide widget using what looks like some long pieces of code, but that's just because of the class names. So let's just check the front end to make sure it's all working properly. Then I'll leave you guys to have a little play. So once again, I'm hoping I've shown you a little bit more CSS and how it can be used with a wonderful Elementor page builder to make those widgets your own. And that's all from me.